Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. All the members are here except for Mr. Turner, but we do anticipate he'll be here shortly. Okay, good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Board of Adjustment. Today's date is June 2nd, 2025, and the time is 5:06 p.m. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and the minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask that those present turn off cell phones or set to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet up on the front table. I'd like to take a moment to review the procedures that the board will follow tonight. First, the board will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items. Then for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to the staff report. Next, we'll hear comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come up to the microphone and please state your first name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by a motion and vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked for by the board. The board shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the board. The board will then formulate and vote on a motion, and the motion will either typically grant or deny the requested application. Any board member who has an ex parte communication to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of the deliberation of the respective agenda item. And any person desiring to appeal the board's decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the filing of this decision with the Planning and Zoning Office. Okay, do we have any public comment on matters not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move down to item 4. We're looking at approval of the previous meeting minutes. I believe this is going back to February. Yeah. I'm correct, Dan?
March 3rd.
March 3rd, okay. Okay, we have a motion by Pam to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Do I have a second? Second by Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Yeah, motion carries. I'm going to move down to item 5. The public hearing is now open. And I'm going to ask you, Mr. Priestley, if you would please read the staff report into the record.
Yes, for this public hearing, the Jason Reynoldson, applicant on behalf of Morningside University, has submitted this conditional use permit application to construct and operate a baseball stadium field for competitive athletic on the property identified as parcel number 884714300005. The facility is meant to provide a dedicated space for organized sports, supporting health and wellness, community spirit, and opportunities for youth and adult leagues. The project's design will minimize the environmental impact, incorporating features such as permeable surfaces, native landscaping, and noise light control strategies. The development will also attract visitors, promote local businesses, and provide a gathering space for events, fostering economic growth and social interaction. The property is in the agricultural preservation zoning district, where fields for competitive athletic are a conditional use under section 3.03.4 of the Woodbury County zoning ordinance, subject to review by the zoning commission, who did review it last Wednesday, May 28th at 5:00 p.m. They had put a letter within the packet. They did have members of the public present that offered several valid concerns for the zoning, or excuse me, Board of Adjustment to consider for approval via this meeting. This proposal was properly noticed in the Sioux City Journal's legal section, and letters were sent to the neighboring property owners and relevant stakeholders. The zoning commission did have 4 members present, which is reflective of their 4-0 vote. The topics brought forward from the public centered around topics such as traffic, event scheduling, time limitations, some noise, light disturbance concerns, water usage, well impact was referenced, intended property use, questions about alcohol, etc. were mentioned at the time. The zoning commission, of course, a letter from Chris Elmer-Zant, the chair of the commission, reflects some of these items that were touched upon within your packet. As far as pay on paper and as far as meeting the zoning requirements and the site plan requirements and everything from that angle, everything looks in order as far as this being a valid conditional use contingent on commencing with this public hearing, gleaning as much information as possible from the public. And I will announce that the applicants are here to present their application to the commission for consideration. And it appears we have members here from the public as well for this to commence.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Priestley. I guess I'm going to go ahead and start off and ask, is there anyone here to speak on behalf about the application? There is, please come to the microphones.
Jason Reynoldsson, 2028 Elk Creek Road. I'm here representing Morningside University. Here to answer any questions you guys may have on the application.
I guess if you don't mind, can you just give us a general overview of
Sure.
what you plan to do here?
Sure. Essentially, we're looking to build a baseball field, stadium on the property. That's really the lines of it. We're looking at all the different utilities that we need to put together there, parking, traffic. Really, we're just looking for a place for our team to, our team doesn't have a home right now, so we're putting something together so that they have a place to compete.
I guess I'll start off with some questions then.
All right.
Is this something you plan that is just solely for Morningside College's use, or do you see this as use for something else down the road? Or?
To start with, it will definitely be strictly for Morningside use. There is a possibility that we bring in camps for students and youth. Pretty much all of Sioux City already has qualified baseball fields for their high schools and middle schools, so I don't foresee games happening there, but mainly when we're bringing the youth, it'll be camps.
I guess I'd lead off with another question that I was reading in your comments from the zoning meeting you attended, that you estimated there'd be 50 games annually. Now, I've never played baseball, but according to the minutes here from that meeting, that most of these games would be in March with rare night games. Now, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. 50 games in March, that seems like an awful lot. Is this?
It's a 50-game season, 59 total with playoffs, so. But it's a 50-game season. So not all of them are played.
It would start in March, and then how long would it continue?
It runs into April. I can ask. Yeah, runs into April. It's a short season in the spring.
So you're looking at essentially a 2-month period here, then this would be utilized.
Roughly, yeah. There's the possibility for a fall league as well for our team. But we haven't actually approached it yet. It's really strictly for the spring, for our main season.
Okay. I'll let some other members address you then.
How many people do you usually have coming from outside Morningside to attend the games?
Coming from outside of Morningside, I'm not sure. I can tell you that on a good day, 100 people to 200 people is is a really good day for attendance at a game.
So do you think that there's room enough to have adequate parking for that many
I
people
do.
then?
Yep.
And so they won't have to be parking on the road or anything like that. They'll all be contained in your parking lot.
Yep. We have parking lots on the, it'd be the west and south side of the, planned on the west and south side of the field.
Okay, thank you.
Bus parking as well on the west and south, or just on the south, I'm sorry.
One question that I have is, you mentioned a baseball diamond. I've heard it called a sports complex. Do you foresee anything other than baseball being played there? I mean, are we looking at soccer? No other events,
No, sir.
no
Baseball.
concerts,
No, sir.
things like that?
No,
Just strictly baseball?
strictly baseball. Yeah.
So
we-
when you say a 50-game schedule, Morningside, I mean, most baseball teams, given our location, they play south, so they're not even in town. Of those 50 games, how many would be played at that complex?
That's where I would ask that question. How many away games are there?
We would have 15 to 17 home dates.
Okay.
Now, those dates would be double headers. There's 2 games generally on those dates. But out of that 50-game season, we would be looking at less than half at home.
Okay, and then tournaments, things like that, would tournaments be played there?
There is a regional tournament that could, if depends on how well our team does. So yes,
Right.
that would include it though. It's a 50 game regular season, and then they have their regional tournament after, which it ends up being about 59 games total.
So just for a ballpark figure, no pun intended, the season starts when?
It's the first week of March.
And then the season would end depending on how the team does?
Technically, the season just ended for the NAIA World Series. It was last week was the final game, but those games wouldn't be played here. They're played out as a World Series, similar to the College World Series in Omaha.
Okay.
So second week of May would be the final time we'd be playing here.
So roughly, I don't know, public math, 8 weeks that facility would be used roughly?
Actually, I want to say 6. I said May. I apologize. I meant April. So yeah, it'd be about more like 6 weeks.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thanks.
What, how long would a double header, like a day that you had 2 games played, what time do those double headers usually get over then?
They can vary. The plan, from the last meeting we had, we actually researched, we can have scheduled day games depending upon whether you have lights or don't have lights. We're trying to be a good neighbor. So the thought would be, we just plan everything as if we don't have lights. So that our schedules are moved up. So on a doubleheader, we might start early. I don't know exactly the right time, but I would assume somewhere in the 10 and 11.
Yeah, that was my concern, was how long the lights would be on at night if
Sure.
you had to run a night game. And if you, in the off season, when you're done with baseball, what happens to the park? Does it just sit empty then? And
No, man, we do practices all the time.
So there'll be-
we'd
still
still be
there'll still be people coming and
Correct.
going there.
correct. The usage is quite a bit down, and traffic shouldn't be affected too much. Usually we have just our team traveling to and from the area, but
They get there, do they?
I haven't discussed how they'd get there. We do have a bus that could transfer them from the campus there, but I assume that they would drive.
Okay.
I must not be seeing them, but which way do you actually, will the traffic come in off of 141 or?
So, and this is open to discussion, obviously. The thought was to come in on Buchanan. So if we're heading south on 141, you'd come in on Buchanan. Parking can start there along the west side of the property.
So
That
most
fills
of
up, then you move
traffic-
to the west, or move to the south side of the property, fill up that parking lot up too.
Okay, so most of it will come in from the west side?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess with this plan, are you saying you are going to put lights up, or that is something you might do down the road? So that's question number 1. And if you are not going to put up lights right away, but you do plan on doing it down the road, how would they be oriented?
Sure.
here on this field?
So the initial project would not include lights right out of the gate. What we're looking for is to have a place to play ball. So the stadium, in the end, will have lights, but not initially right away. We want to get the field in, and that's a pretty large expense. So it'll be done in stages. As far as lights on the field themselves, if you follow the diamond around, there'd be a set of lights on the north side of the field. Essentially, there'd be 4 lights along the outfield line there, following. Yep. And then there would be a secondary set of lights off of the clubhouse, or behind home plate.
So you would have some light directed south and you would have some light directed north. I'm
Correct. There would be
understanding.
lights heading north. Yep. Yes. The majority of the lighting would be facing south and facing west. But we'd have 2 sets of lights that would be facing, one would be facing north and one would be facing east. That would be behind the home stands there. That makes sense? Sorry, I want to make sure I
No,
answered
it
it properly.
does. Yep.
What do you propose for traffic control? Like, do you have a staff that goes out there and directs traffic when the game is over?
We certainly could, yes.
And when it's on and things like that?
Yeah, we certainly could.
So you don't
yes.
have a big traffic jam
To-
out there?
To be perfectly clear, we're still in the very early stages of planning. So suggestions are more than welcome. And yeah, that's certainly an idea. We have plenty of student workers and staff that can, in our athletics, can help move traffic and keep it flowing.
Okay, good.
What kind of sound would the general public in this area expect from this stadium? I'm assuming you have some kind of a PA system
Sure.
for announcements and things like that, but I mean, do you have intermission or in between batters, music play and things like that? I mean, what kind of sound would we expect from this?
During the game, you'd have normal, announcements and play-by-plays, or however you want to put it. There would be music. There's walk-up music for everybody. I think we can control the decibel level so that it's not affecting our neighbors. Outside of game day, there shouldn't be. We typically all of our students and our staff have Bluetooth speakers that they use, so should be a lot quieter when it's not game day.
I wanted to just touch on the traffic just for a moment. Obviously, we'll have traffic going to and from the event, the ball games. What I'm looking at is 141, and I think of safety. I mean, I see bicycles out there. I've seen horses along 141. If I counted the apartment buildings accurately, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 right there at the end of Singing Hills.
Mhm.
If each building had 1 car per unit, there's 12 units in each building. 20 times 12, that's 240 vehicles, just rounded up to 250. That's 500 a day. That's just if one apartment had, and I'm kind of going down the road here a little bit. We're talking traffic now. It's going to affect the event and people around there. But so we have 250 cars a day traveling there. And if you take a third of the apartments, say it would have 2 vehicles per apartment complex, you could have as many as 720 cars in additional traffic pattern that we currently don't have. Now we're going to put a sporting event out there. That would affect you guys in a negative way, or just maybe safety for the public. I just wanted to throw that out there. We don't have any turning lanes. There's no turning lanes going into your future complex. That's the only thing that I think of. I think of public safety. I've seen the horses out there. Lots of people like to ride their bicycles. They make that loop down 141 so they can catch D38 going back west into Sergeant Bluff. That's none of your worries as far as the bicyclists and the horses, but it could be, because we got traffic going in and out. We want safe routes for college students going to and from the game. I just wanted to throw that out there. That's a lot of traffic out there that the infrastructure is not built for.
Agreed.
I think that's a valid point.
I would agree with you. I actually live in the area and I pull on 141 every morning when I'm on the way to work. Yeah, traffic is, we have to work with the Iowa DOT to make sure we can either regulate speed or put in lanes but yeah, you're.
And when we were all jammed up out there on Highway 20 with the construction, they had
Yeah.
everything routed down to the overpass there.
Mhm.
And there was a motorcycle accident up there. I was actually there that day when that happened. But I think for the board and just for the county to think of the traffic flow, as far as the venue goes, you guys would be affected by that.
Agreed.
That's another question I would have is, during a typical game, what's the length of the game? I mean, when would it start and when are the games typically over?
Game is more than 2 hours, less than 3. That's when I asked our coach. It can vary. It really depends on the weather, what they're waiting on. 2 would be a very fast game. 2 hours would be a very fast game. 3 hours would be more along the lines where they would end up playing. Start times can be changed. We can work with schedules to accommodate anything on that. Not anything, but most things. The GPAC gives us different times where we can start and play.
I guess when would you guys prefer to start your games? You know, what would your preferred target start time be? And then I guess 3 hours later would be your end time thereabouts, but.
Well, I would have to defer to my athletics department on that.
Right now, we generally start at 5.
Could you come to the microphone just so everybody can hear and it can be in the record? Thank you.
You bet. Jim Sykes, Vice President of Athletics at Morningside, 5508 Wild Rose Lane. Back to game time.
Yes.
So right now we generally start, if there's lights, start at 5. First game's generally done by 7:30, and we're hoping to start the second game at 7:30 to be done by 10 o'clock. But that is not set in stone. That is more to allow our students to stay in class all day and not have to get pulled out of class for, say, a 3 p.m. start or something of that nature. But we have the assurances from the conference that we can set start times for games, and because we would not have lights, we definitely would have to start earlier to be done by that. And of course, in the spring, you got rain, you got lightning, you got everything else to deal with that can mess with timing, but you do the best you can.
Does anyone else have, on the board have any questions for him while he's up here?
So on this map, it's got a stockpile. What's that referring to?
Stockpile?
Yeah. I think that's what it says
What part of the map?
on in this one. Yeah. There's a stockpile right here. Over in this corner, right to the right.
Stockpile. I believe that's probably in reference to how we're going to grade it. The only thing we have in that area is, and it's not immediate, but the plan was to put at some point a pitching and batting facility there. I'm assuming that's part of the grade work for the stockpile. Does it have it on the actual map? That looks like it's the grading map. It shows the grade work that needs to be done. Yeah. I'm assuming that's part of.
Are you bringing dirt in for this? You have there's a
don't
lot
think
of
we're gonna have
grading
to.
work to do. You've got to bring dirt in from somewhere else.
Well, yeah, I don't want to eliminate the possibility, but there's quite a bit of, obviously you can see there's a lot of grade work that would need to be done to put the field in. Yeah. The idea would be to sink the actual baseball field down. So we cut into and then retaining wall around the backside, so we have a good place to overlook the field as we're playing. Also would help with wind and weather,
Mhm.
But the way on the north side of the field there's a retention pond, so yeah, there's quite a bit of a grade work that's going to have to be done over there to make
Okay.
it work. As far as stockpile, though, I must assume that that's part of the grade.
Okay.
As far as, I guess intrusion of this complex, will this entire facility be fenced in or will parts of it be open?
It'll be the field itself will be completely fenced in. The exterior of the property, I believe, has fence on it and will maintain that fence that's already on it.
Okay, no, you're just talking like standard farm fence or,
Yeah,
okay, so
yeah.
the field I understand would be fenced in, which
Sure,
makes
sure.
sense, but like the border of the entire property will not have any special fencing. It'll just be like parking lots open, no gates, no fence around parking lot.
No, the parking lot will be gated. So yeah, everything on the backside there so it'd be the west and the south of the field would be fenced there.
With like a security type fence.
Correct.
Okay, so,
Chain link, black coated chain link.
so as you're looking at this drawing, like the dotted lines essentially could be the fence perimeter.
On the south and the west, yes. And then we would follow that fencing around the field itself. On the north, on the 141 side, it would just be regular fencing.
Okay. Does anyone else on the board have any further questions from the applicant at this time? Okay, seeing
Thank
none,
you.
I guess we may call you up for
Okay.
reference again, so,
Thank
thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this application for or against? Any members of the public, anyone else? Any other comments?
My name's Deputy Forrest. I live at 1861 Buchanan Avenue. He mentioned getting dirt. I'd like to know where, I couldn't hear where he said they were gonna get dirt from. Across the road? Is that where you're gonna bring in the dirt from? From the property that Morningside already owns across from my house?
No, we're not.
Yeah, if you don't mind. you can
I'm
come
sorry,
back
I
up to
didn't
the
understand. I
microphone.
couldn't hear that
You're
part.
talking about the north side of that field there. We don't plan on bringing dirt from the field itself. We plan on farming that north. That's part of our ag department. So we wouldn't touch that field at all. If we need to bring dirt in, we have vendors that we work with to bring
Oh, okay.
fill in.
All right, I just didn't
No,
hear that
no.
part. Also, just because Morningside University doesn't sell alcohol, could we have no alcohol permitted? I've been to college, it's been a while, but I remember what tailgating's like, so that would definitely be one of our restrictions that we would like. And I don't think their timelines are adding up. If you have 3 hours to play a game and you're playing a lot of double headers and you don't start till 5 o'clock, you're running into the 11, 12 o'clock hour probably quite a bit. Because if you've ever been to any of the Explorers game or any other baseball games, they don't run on time a lot of the times. So that's just my concerns. Oh, and the traffic too.
I'm Jim McCullen. I live at 1639 County Home Road. And your comment is very apropos about traffic. And since the Peterson addition down there and they built those apartments, it's really busy down there at certain times of day. And when he said he wants to do the game start at 5 o'clock, that's a really busy street then. And, I look at he said the traffic is going to come in off of Buchanan, but your question was they gonna come off 141? And yes, they will. And I can see it backing up there, and the people don't slow down very much there. And sometimes there's quite a number of cars backed up because today people don't get up in time to go to work, or they gotta go home for beer time. That's all I got.
I'm Chad Hofer. I live at 1631 County Home Road, so I'd probably be the closest neighbor. And unfortunately, 1 o'clock in the morning, I called Chad Sheehan on Friday night because I was woke up by shooting at the county home. And that got taken care of this morning. That's supposed to be closed at 10 o'clock. So the county home would be directly to the south of the ballpark within a block. So I'm not really opposed to anything on the ballpark. I mean, I think they do a good job, but I think the time deal has to be enforced. I think that's really important. And the lighting, they had one light up at the county home at the range, and it lights my bedroom up. So it was the light that woke me up first, then the shooting, therefore second. And so anyways, I mean, I want to be a good neighbor, and I expect anyone out in the neighborhood should be a good neighbor. So, once in a while, it's probably tolerable, but depending on what time they start the games, we all should probably go to a Morningside game to see. I mean, sure, they do a good job, but that's kind of what I have. The traffic, that would be a concern turning onto Buchanan. It would almost be better if they ran that up to, and the only reason I live out there, and I've had almost a couple close calls, but when you go north out of there and you go to 141 and hang a left, there's a pretty good hill there. You don't see it. I've forgot stuff and pulled around that way to go back to my house, and you double check it. And even when you come from our house, so it'd be on this other side, and this is something that probably needs to be looked at more for maybe a little better sight vision. But when we leave our house to turn right and go to Sioux City, which you'd be going north on 141, there's a lot of times you look to the left and that curve from my place, and I just get on the road and I got somebody on my bumper that was never there when I pulled out. So actually, both on the north and the south end of that deal, I mean, would be and in that deal with the apartments there at the bottom of Whispering Creek, that there needs to be turning. I mean, that's been a bad deal going to work in the morning and coming back. People don't use their blinker. They take their time making that corner, and it's just a matter of time when so something needs to be done, and I'm not saying that that's anything to do with the college fault, but when you add that many more vehicles, as said, I think it's a safety concern. And then the bikes, and of course my daughter is the one riding the horse probably most of the time out there, but her horses are pretty good with traffic, so don't worry about that too much. But anyways, that would just be my concern, would be the time restraints on the evening games. So thank you.
I guess if you don't mind, Mr. Hofer, I'd just like to ask you on the time constraint thing. What is your opinion, would
Well,
be?
I think 10 o'clock. I mean, if their neighbor has to abide by it, the sheriff's department, I think then the college should have to abide by that curfew. I think it's kind of hard to say, I think it's kind of hard. That's why I said to, Sheriff Sheehan, I said, what was going on? He said, because I called him back today, and he said, well, he said, one of my sergeants gave the guys, there was 2 guys that had to qualify for shooting, as they do. He said, but he didn't think they'd do it at 1 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, but then those guys work night shift. That's their time that they're out. I mean, and I'm all for the sheriff's department and what they do out there. I mean, I don't have any problems, but it just becomes a problem when you wake your neighbor up.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Hofer?
Your driveway comes in off of Old 141?
No, I'm on Old County Home Road, so I'm straight to the
east.
straight to the east.
Yeah.
So is where I'm at.
Thank you.
But that'd be my only concern.
One further comment, if you would tolerate. The gentleman from Morningside said we could control the decibel level. I think we need to set some kind of, this is the decibel level it needs to be at, rather than we could. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public or anyone else that would like to address the board?
I'm just wondering if it would be possible for the college to work with the DOT to get turning lanes or whatever that needs to happen out there to alleviate some of the traffic problems, because it sounds like that this is going to be that there are going to be some traffic issues out there.
Yep.
And not necessarily caused all by Morningside. I mean, it's just because of the apartment complexes and whatever that are out there already. There's already a lot of traffic, and it just sounds like maybe there needs to be some stoplights or some turning lanes or something that could help with that problem. So
I'm in charge of the facilities, and I'm more than willing to work with the IOTT. I couldn't agree more. I like I said, I do pull out on 141 every morning to go to work, and I understand that traffic. So yeah, it's not that I disagree. It's just something I have to work with, and I'm willing to work with DOT.
I just think, we want to do everything we can to make sure that it's going to be a safe situation for everybody.
Yep.
So
100%. And I get what you're saying. It's not just the apartments. Morningside's presence would increase that as well. So yeah, working with them to create a turning lane and signage and maybe the lights to slow people down. We can activate them during game days, during games, maybe, the options are there. So yeah, and I'm happy to work with DOT.
great.
I guess maybe on a point of clarification for that, Pam, I believe he would have to work with the county engineer.
Okay.
I believe that's
Yeah.
the county engineer's jurisdiction, I
Yeah.
believe. So rather than the
But I mean,
DOT, but yeah.
I mean, they're all kind of,
And I've already spoken with Laura Sievers on the parking portion of it. So yeah, if it's with the engineers department, absolutely. I'm happy to work with them on it as well.
Okay. Did you have a question, Tom?
Yeah, is that D25 or 141? Is that a state or county?
It's county now, I believe. I think it used to be state, but I believe they turned it over to the county.
Yeah, so it'd be the county engineer.
Dan, do you know, what is the plan for Buchanan Avenue? Is that going to get paved anytime in the?
I don't have that off the top of my head. That's definitely a Laura situation. Originally, when we talked in the application, I had sent Jason to Laura to deal with the parking plan, and I was kind of surprised because I send these things over to the state DOT too, and Miss Felix from the DOT actually made a comment that you saw in the packet about the bus parking there. But as far as the county engineer looking at the parking aspect and sending it over, we did not get a official engineering comment as far as the effect on the road system from them. But she did look at the driveway entrance situation as far as a form of flow, everything from that perspective. So it was at least vetted, at least through the county engineers, based on this respective site plan that we have at this point. But it doesn't hurt to have further conversations with Mrs. Sievers based upon the effects of the area, the traffic flow, and if Buchanan may, and I think where you're going is there any pavement plans or any widening plans or anything? And I couldn't speak to that appropriately, but it's always a possibility.
Well, I always get concerned whenever you have intersections that aren't 90 degrees and you have these, that's when it's hard to make that turn and look and see what things are coming. It's safer if people are turning onto the road rather than going across. And I could see Buchanan Avenue down the road becoming a paved road and more people going across. Because that would be kind of a shortcut to Highway 20 for schools to come in and out of. I do think we need to look at this from a long-term standpoint of not just turning lanes, but what are we gonna do there long-term, maybe to get people to pull up and be more straight so that they can see both ways and, you know, I think these are complicated intersections that we need to look at.
I can tell you that when I was out there coming north onto Buchanan and stopping to turn onto 141, continuing north, you're almost looking behind you.
Yes.
So for our purposes, traffic really should flow from the north to the south. You'd have a tremendous issue if you're going the other direction.
Yep.
Not that it's, not that it's any better. Well, it's a little bit better, but you still have to make that left turn onto 141 off of County Home Road. So, but again, working with, the engineer's offices, it's not I have no problems working with them on that and trying to make it completely safe.
Yeah, well, I think we need to look long-term
Sure.
because you're not the only people that are gonna want to move out here. This area is gonna grow. And I think it's cheaper to fix the whole problem from the get-go, or at least have a plan, than it is to try and fix it afterward.
I guess I'd like to touch on some of the public concerns. So, the use of alcohol was brought up. I guess, what would your guys' policy be on that, on this grounds? Is this something you allow at your other places of sporting, events, or what would your policy be here?
Currently, Morningside doesn't have alcohol at any of their sporting events, and that's not the plan here. We have a dry athletics events, so we do have college students, and if they're sitting in the parking lot, I don't know how to. We have security that can monitor that, but
So in
we
other
don't
words,
allow it. That's the point.
in other words, you would be fine posting signage or something that
Sure.
said no alcohol allowed on grounds or things to that nature.
Correct.
Okay. I guess kind of the other big ticket items that I heard from the public concerns would be the decibel level, lighting, and the time restrictions. So I'm not sure about lighting, how that would, if that would, directly affect the neighbors. I potentially could, depending on how this is oriented. So I think that's still a legitimate concern for sure. As far as decibel level of noise, what are we talking here? That's the problem. I'm not an expert on that. So.
And I'm not either. I think we'd have to do some kind of study to see what an acceptable decibel level is. Again, we're more than willing to work and, to maintain that, we want to be good neighbors, I guess is what I want to say. We don't want anybody to have to.
I
deal
think
with
they do have, don't they have rules about decibel levels for different areas in the county?
Unincorporated Woodbury County does not address
No,
decibels.
Oh, okay.
A city might on specific things or a specific project, but unincorporated areas such as ours does not have decibel language.
That doesn't mean that we couldn't research areas that are and work off of that. So, yeah, the work would be put in to make sure.
Go out in the country, sometimes sound really
Travels
travels.
100%.
And, I live 3 miles from the fairgrounds in Woodbury County. And we can hear the tractor pull going on clear up, out at our house, just like we were sitting in the stadium. So, it's definitely an issue.
I live 2 miles as a crow flies from there, and if I hear Chad, I can hear the range activity pretty clearly from my house. So, yeah. Again, willing to work on setting a standard and following it.
As far as the east end, I guess the east side of this complex, where it meets County Home Road, 141, that east corner right there.
Correct.
I mean, would you guys be opposed to some kind of more mature, vegetative screen there. And we'd have to approve this with, I guess, the county engineer too for line of sight and stuff, but I don't know if there's a potential buffer of some kind of greenery, some more mature trees that we put in to block some lighting. I don't know if that would be more agreeable to the neighbors or not, but I mean, would you guys be open to something like that?
Certainly. Yeah. You're talking about landscaping though? Is that?
Well, landscaping or some kind of vegetative buffer, some taller trees maybe that
Sure.
would block some lighting if there was lighting shining directly to the east, for Mr. Hofer, who's almost right across the road from this, but
I think any tree we put in would take a bit of time to get to the point where it's going to be blocking, but yeah, 100%. We'd
Sure.
be willing to work with them all on that. I don't know if anybody's been on our campus, but we create park-like environments on our campus. It's going to be the same here. It would be native grasses and sure trees. We want to create shady areas as well to have people that can sit underneath them.
Of course, in March and April.
March and April's, yeah, it's a little different,
Please.
right?
one of the other big concerns, that I took away from the public addressing this, was the time restriction part of it potentially. How do you feel about that 10 o'clock deadline because of how the sheriff's department is abiding by that at the county home complex?
We can comply with that. There's no problem with that at all for us.
You think you could comply with that?
Yeah, I think on our part, we'd have to do some work. If weather delays happen, we'd have to figure out how to make that work. But I don't think we have any issues. If that's a set standard, we can take the challenge on to figure out how to handle weather issues if that's what happens for us. I think we can start our games and doubleheaders early enough in the day, maybe 10 o'clock or whatever, to try to make it so that we don't run into that late time. But absolutely, following it would be not a problem.
And I think and obviously the traffic thing, that's not even, I mean, the biggest problem is that's a 50-mile-an-hour road and everybody drives 60, and so that's, like I said, that's not, the college's deal, the light deal. I mean, the time restraints are what just looking at the project as a whole. Yeah. I mean, that's ag land. That's what it was bought for, was for an ag program. And now it's this. I mean, almost should maybe go somewhere where the infrastructure is already there for safety matters. And, I know it was the problems with the ball field. I get, it's kind of a quick thing, bing, bang, boom. Is there a better location? Somewhere in Sioux City. I guess I haven't been looking for property for it, but just coming out to the county with the infrastructure. I mean, really that infrastructure should be overhauled all the way, from there up to Morningside Avenue exit. I mean, it's not a very wide road at all. So I think, and I didn't even think about any of that until I just started listening to the comments here tonight. So it's like, then you start putting all the pieces together. So there's a little work.
When you're talking March and April, that's planting season out there. And you've got Peterson with Whiskey Creek Farms running his overloaded manure trucks and hay bale trucks constantly down Buchanan, crossing the road. And because he owns the property at the other end down there. And I mean, we some days can't breathe because the dust is so bad because there are so many trucks and they're constant. So what are they going to do if they're having ball games and these trucks are running? He's probably going to tell them the same thing he told us about the dust. Oh,
Tough.
there adds more traffic.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's 40 semi loads a day down county.
How are the kids going to play baseball with that going on?
I don't know. Have you looked at other sites?
Several. Yeah. We have looked at many sites, including our own campus. We have a 70-acre campus. We've tried different ways to try to get it fit on our campus on itself. It just doesn't seem to work. We had Lewis Pool, which is just off of our campus. We've kind of been looking at purchasing that from the city for several years now, and that hasn't panned out. We've done extensive negotiations with the city on Lewis and Clark Park. Again, it hasn't been able to pan out for us, and it's gotten to the point now where we don't have a home, where our home games are at Briarcliff, which is awkward. So, yeah, we've looked quite a bit. As far as the dust goes, maybe we can. I know around my house we put down. It's an oil-based product that keeps the dust down, but that'd be something I think Morningside be willing to look at purchasing from the county to help alleviate some of that. And they're right. It's something I hadn't thought about, but if the trucks are just going back and forth, we would have to do something. So, yeah.
I mean, that to me would be a major issue
Yeah.
with that much traffic, that many trucks coming and going. For people coming to the game, for players trying to play over the noise and whatever.
As soon as she brought it up, I knew exactly. Should they drive right by my house? I think they go down County Home Road and head right down to Elk Creek. So, right.
20 of those loads
Are they?
Oh, yeah. Be good. Overloading, maneuver.
Agreed. It's something that would definitely have to address.
Just a second, ma'am, if you don't mind, if you'd come to the microphone, yeah, I'm sorry. I guess, maybe this isn't directed for you at the moment, but kind of from what I've been writing down, I'm addressing the members here, myself. We've kind of uncovered a lot of questions here that, haven't crossed my mind, maybe didn't cross some of the minds of the public here in attendance. It seems like there's a lot going on that we don't have some, enough information to maybe formulate something here tonight is what I'm afraid of. But do you guys have other thoughts with that? I don't know if this is something we ask Morningside to come back with more information on several of these items, that I've wrote down that we've discussed tonight that were, that are still kind of up in the air, but I'm afraid that I could make a decision on this tonight, with some of the open-ended questions we have that we don't have the information on.
For sure would like to see what would happen if you were able to talk to the county engineer about those traffic issues and things like that. Because I think that is going to be a major issue. And then the additional traffic of the trucks and things like that. I mean, just sit down and talk to them and see what can we do to alleviate this problem. If we put a baseball diamond out here, what are the safety concerns going to be for you as well as for us? And, maybe we do need to postpone a decision and to get some more.
I wanted to just mention it one more time. I mean, we've heard a lot of concerns this evening, but the one thing that seems to stick out is it's traffic, and it's traffic, and it's traffic. I just wanted to comment also too on the length of a game. I mean, unless you got a bad pitcher, I'm sorry, or maybe lousy hitters, the game's going to go on. It's going to go on. It's in my mind, and I played a lot of baseball. I don't know how you put a limitation on a game. It's over when it gets over, and it's not going to happen all the time, So it is a concern, in my opinion, but I don't live right across the street from it either. So I get it, and I understand the lighting. I get that too. But the one thing that just really sticks out in my mind, it's safety. We want to be safe for the kids, for the spectators, for the people that live out there. And it comes back to traffic, 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 no turning lanes. It just will continue to grow. All those apartments out there, they're not fully, they're not filled yet. They're still under construction. So if you think it's busy now, just wait. So I would say that as far as the venue goes, I personally don't have a problem with it. I do have a problem with everything that is affected around it, and it comes back to the traffic and safety of the public.
Mr. Reynolds, I'm sorry to bring you back up here, but I did have one more question.
Sure.
And that's just regards to time of construction. So when did you foresee actually starting construction on this facility? And when, so time of construction till end?
It's a 3-month construction process. Parts have to be ordered in before we can, or material needs to be brought in. Grade work needs to be brought in. The goal would be to have a field playable for spring ball of next year.
Okay, that was my question. So does anyone else have any questions for him before he sits down?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would wish to address the board? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Priestley, do we have anyone on the phone?
We do not.
Okay. I guess at this time, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'd make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Turner to close the public hearing. Do we have a second? Seconded by Pam. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Yeah, that motion carries. I guess I'd like to open it up amongst ourselves now and kind of hear what some of your thoughts are then.
I would concur with that. I don't think we have enough information. I think we need to make sure that where the engineer wants to go with this, where planning and zoning wants to go with it, as far as, I think this area is going to continue to develop. And I think it'd be short-sighted to not at least have a plan and enforce it's obvious the market wants to go there. We need to be a little more proactive rather than reactive and have a plan on how we're going to deal with traffic on that road.
So Mr. Priestley, I'm assuming that we could, submit to you a list of questions maybe that you could submit to the Morningside College representatives and or the county also.
Yeah, as we've done before, if you give me those targeted categories, I can work with Jason and the Morningside group on getting clarification on those items. I imagine the traffic and the noise and those things would be areas where we go get clarification, get the county engineer more on record as far as the effects of that respective area. Doing that, I'll remind you that this public hearing does take care of the conditional use part of the public hearing, but they have 30 days basically for rendering a specific decision. So it would have to be, a plan would have to be put into place working with the applicant here on those expectations on getting a level of that information for the next meeting. And we would, as tradition has been, we would have it as another public hearing so that the public is notified about this interaction, so they have the latest information. But the clock that we're on will definitely put us into a July Board of Adjustment meeting, the way the ordinance reads. So it's my hope, if we have these categories where, and you might recall in the past, when you've directed staff to do that, we prepared the questions and we worked with them on flushing out more details. So I think something that is in the sense of a document that lays out what their time frame is, their business plan for the facility. That's what it really is, a business plan for this facility with a time frame of when they operate, a traffic control plan. I would have to say that's something that comes out of the engineer's office as far as a recommendation one way or the other, because you might have the county engineer one way say that it's adequate based on the respective plan, or there might be something that the county might need to look at. The traffic is definitely a relevant thing to look at as far as the conditional use and the noise situation. What is the industry standard as far as the noise and everything? So I would task the applicant to come back to us with mitigation techniques as far as putting the facility together. Is there any way to deflect lighting, to deflect sound? And what can they bring forward that could possibly meet these? Right now, you're at a stage of either negotiating a level of conditions. And remember, if the conditions can't be met on an adequate level where the board feels that it can fit, the way these can go is approved with conditions, or denied based on not being able to meet those conditions. But this does require a continued dialogue with the applicant and trying to find a meaningful way to mitigate any concerns that you see as possibly weak in the application and want to mitigate that. So I would just ask as staff if you educate me as far as the categories so that they know, so that we know, that it'll spur a conversation that we could have right away to get them on track of getting some info to us.
Is that something you'd like to do here right now?
I think it'd be
Discussion.
important for the Board of Adjustment to tell us what those are and have a motion and a second to direct staff to work with them based on what those criteria are.
We can make the motion that way rather than making a motion to table, or we have to make two different motions.
It would be tabled to the next meeting, to the next public hearing, but in doing that, you'll expect more information.
So we can do it all in one motion.
You can
that
put
way.
it together all in
Okay.
one.
I guess at this time, I would ask you guys, I was writing down a list of things during the discussion back and forth, and some of them I wrote down was, alcohol use. I think they've addressed that. The time of construction, we've got that addressed temporarily. We have dust concerns or dust mitigation from Buchanan Avenue. The decibel level, expected at a game, what they expect, the decibel level might be, or what an acceptable level is. So that's something for further discussion. And then the time restrictions, of 10 o'clock, can they meet that? How do you do that with, like Mr. Philippi, what you brought up, how do you keep that at a hard deadline with a game? And then we've talked about a turn lane off of 141 or anything to mitigate traffic problems. And bringing into what Mr. Hofer talked about, the line of sight on both, I guess you would call it kind of the east end of 141, close to this proximity, and then further west also, or further north. So does anyone else want to add anything to that I missed specifically?
Do they have a contractor already chosen? Okay.
Does anyone want to entertain a motion for this? Would that motion need to include what we've?
Yeah, I think it should include clarification in the sense of a business plan, this clarification on the basic things you went down as far as the alcohol clarification, the time of construction, dust control mitigation, decibel level discussion, time restrictions as well, as far as the time frame in which they need to operate or plan to operate, and the road situation as far as traffic can flow. I would say more so geared at what the needs are out of the secondary roads department, because depending on what comes out of there, again, I'm not going to attempt to speak for Laura or interpret what's come out of the secondary roads, but if anything involving a turn lane situation could really throw off the various scenarios, that a lot of times that's taking of right away, that's adjustment, that involves the Board of Supervisors, that involves a major change to ultimately what the project is at hand. And again, this has already been run through the county engineer. So I think it's going to be a matter of putting some level of more dialogue with them as far as what the county engineer has to say for that, supporting that respective area, and just kind of a reminder about the traffic flow. So I think all of these concerns could encompass that motion, and also any other information that is relevant to public health, safety, and welfare. In other words, working directly with the applicant to get a detailed plan to the Board of Adjustment that clarifies these respective issues. And I think saying it that way, I hope that's clear to them even here right now. And when we have a future discussion in the next few days, that we're kind of on the same page from that regard. So again, the clarification would be that to have that information available and be able to bring it back to the next meeting, or a form of it that gets to a level of progress.
So we could have a theoretical motion that would state, we wish to table this decision until the next meeting in July in order to get clarification of a business plan for the field, including but not limited to a decibel level, alcohol policy, dust control, light mitigation, and safe traffic flow.
Reasonable.
Would that be?
Yeah, and I would kind of add another phrase that that'll cover anything that could have been missed, just so we have some flexibility as far as in spirit of what was said tonight.
I think we should also consider water control while it's being built. Because I mean, this is going to require a lot of dirt work, and that water pretty much drains all one way, I believe. And there are times we have trouble with water puddling on that road anyhow around that area, and we don't need mud puddling on that road.
Yeah. A lot of that would be covered under MPDES and the standard grading when they have to work with the DNR and get the grading plan and have a SWIP plan available that mitigates that. So that can be naturally built in, but worth a mention.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a motion they'd like to present, or are you guys good with me making another one?
I'm good with you because you've got the list.
Okay. Well, we'll try this, Dan. So we can make a motion to table this conditional use permit application for the next meeting in order to get clarification from Morningside University of their business plan for the field, including but not limited to surface water runoff, sound decibel level, their alcohol policy, dust control, light mitigation, safe traffic flow, in order to protect the general public welfare. I'm trying to include that at the end to encompass that, but
And I put an et cetera on there too, just for anything that could pop up.
okay. So in order to protect the general public welfare, et cetera.
Public health, welfare, and safety.
Okay.
I think that would fit.
Okay, so I'll do it one more time. I'll read this off then. So I make a motion that we table this conditional use permit until the next meeting in order for Morningside College to give us clarification of the business plan for their baseball field, including but not limited to surface water runoff, decibel level, alcohol policy, dust control, light mitigation, safe traffic flow in order to protect the general public health, welfare, and safety, etc. Is that, if that's an acceptable motion, I guess I would ask for a second. Okay, we have a second by Pam. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries.
I will call you tomorrow.
Okay, Mr. Priestley, I believe you had something to give us before the next public hearing is open?
Yeah, so the next one's a variance. Let me get to that page here. I must have rotated the document. The whole packet rotated. Okay, before we get into the variance, public hearing, I just want to put out for the record, this respective variance application is a one of those scenarios where it's definitely a practical difficulty where the applicant has a plan to build a house, build a shed, wants to build the shed first, and that just kind of gets in the way. The ordinance just kind of stifles the plan, even though they're committed by everything that they put in the packet. And I just want to make the statement as the public hearing begins. I caught something today as far as the public notice, and that would be the parcel number, and everything is correct. That was public noticed in the papers as well as the letters. The letter includes an actual location map on it, and the one that went in the paper includes the parcel number, the 8942, are we on the correct packet here? Yeah, the 894214400004, including the correct township, as well as the reference to the deed that was filed, document number 2005-04352. So we've got notice that's acceptable. I just wanted to point out that we had the section number. I had the section number wrong as far as I believe it said section 21 and it's actually section 14. That's just a little minor hiccup detail, but I wanted to put it on the record and have it reflective in the minutes that the Board of Adjustment is aware that we had that little glitch in the notification, but the notification still pointed to the correct site in terms of the parcel number. So in general, in the scheme of things, that's a substantial enough to move forward with the notice. And I just wanted to have that reflected should you decide to have the public hearing or not. But I think it's acceptable potentially to proceed forward.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Priestley. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on this variance request. And I'm going to ask you again, Mr. Priestley, to please read the staff report.
Yeah, so this Kirby and Janine Eli have a goal to build a house and have an accessory structure out there at their respective property. And as I referenced the parcel number before, this is in the Union Township, and the goal is to build an approximately 40 by 60 plus or minus accessory shed prior to finishing their principal structure. Although they plan to start building, and this is what's very helpful to this case, they plan to start building the foundations of both structures at the same time, which is definitely an assurance that they're going to have both structures on the property. They would focus on it's more economically feasible for them to get the shed completed and work on that before they ultimately finish this respective house. This request is actually on a parcel that was split. Beacon doesn't reflect it yet. It's on an 11.77 acre, and that's where I made reference to the deed before. The deed that was referenced and is appropriate on file and the recorder's office does split that parcel into the 11 or so acres where they plan on putting the respective house and the shed on. Their site plan and everything from an administrative standpoint looks fine. They have the building permit applications available in the packet. And should this look okay to the Board of Adjustment, they would be able to proceed with filing both permits exactly at the same time. And then that would allow them to proceed with starting on the shed, the foundation work, and commencing forward with their respective projects. So staff sees this as a very reasonable practical difficulty in terms of just affecting the way a couple landowners want to start out their future dream home out there in the county. So with that said, staff does recommend approval.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Priestley. Do we have anyone here that wishes to speak about this application?
The applicant is here.
Okay. Do you wish to address the board with anything or?
Kirby Eli, 25273 Corwin Court. Just going to the board to reiterate what Daniel had said. This is the start of our retirement. So we're putting everything we got out there. We will be living in a camper while we build. So that's why it's kind of critical for us to focus on the shop once the foundations are done. So we have a place for building materials, our belongings, tools, things like that, that we can keep in there out of the weather. Safety and security too, for us. And then another piece of it is my mother-in-law does own majority of the property around there too. So to have us out there as well also benefits her with some of the maintenance and things that she needs to get done out there. So and as Daniel said, this is the start of our retirement, and this is definitely going to be a place that we're going to take care of and do it the way we want to do it, because this is basically our last house. So anyways, you see it.
It's just the shop, we need to be closed in by winter. And building the house, there's just, so we need the shop so we can get the camper in the shop, be closed in by winter, and then start hammering on the house come spring.
I just wanted to clarify, you're building on the west side of that Preston Avenue, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and there's already a street sign there where you're building.
Yes, we already have the driveway location,
Right,
the
okay.
culvert.
Just wanted to make
and
sure I was in the right
address.
spot.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Anyone else have any questions for the applicant? I don't believe I have any either at this time, so thank you, guys. Well, after looking this over, I think this seems like a pretty straightforward, variance that we have encountered something like this in the past before. And I believe it's definitely a hardship here. So I think this.
And may I, you might notice in the packet, I included the recent legislation that came out of the state legislature and signed by the governor, that up until now, we know that the variance consisted of the hardship, financial hardship, where it really hits you in the pocketbook, and the practical difficulty. The legislature, through their debates and through the reflective in this legislation, has presented this to counties to find practical solutions to things that are, in a sense, pardon me wrapping these words back, but practical difficulties, solutions to little problems like this that ordinances like ours can cause at times. And the ordinance, the change, I should say, at the state legislature puts a more relaxation on things such as setbacks and dimensions of structures, et cetera. So it's much more flexible in terms of coming to the board, but it does put a burden on the applicant to come forward with a plan, a specific plan on how they're going to use the property and handle or mitigate that practical difficulty that is at hand. And I think that when we look at the way this ordinance is written, we have a situation where if it's not a farmer, the county, it's the desire of the county not to have people just put sheds up out there without a house. If you have a shed, you have a responsibility, if you're not a farmer, to ensure that that's secure. And one of the forms of security on a property is to live on that property so that you monitor that and you're near that. And so I think that was one of the intents originally, to have this stipulation in the ordinance about the principal structure or the house must be built before the shed. We've seen this before, maybe a couple of years ago. We've seen the same thing. When somebody comes in serious with an application and they're going to dig a foundation and they're going to be putting a house in, I think it's very straightforward that it is a practical difficulty. It would be different if somebody only came in with the shed plan, only the shed plan. Oh, we'll get to the house someday. But in this case, we see the plan forward. Approval of this variance basically empowers us to go ahead and issue the building permits and have the expectations of building and completing that. Building permits basically have a year on them as far as getting the structures built and everything. They can be renewed so that there is a assurance that staff is involved with their project beyond the variance there. So I think it's again a reasonable request when a property owner comes forward with well laid out materials. And I will say that Mr. Eli has been very active on this plan for quite some time, and I know he's committed from everything that I think he approached me even a year ago as he led up to this project, and now he's at the execute the plan stage. And so again, I wanted to get that in there and explain the changes to the variance, and also say that the public hearing is still open, so you can close that anytime too.
Okay. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Turner to close the public hearing. Do we have a second? Seconded by Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Yeah, that motion carries. Does anyone want to entertain a potential?
Before, one more thing about the notice quirk that I mentioned before. Everybody gets a letter within 500 feet of the variance scenario too. And everybody in this case got the letter. And I just want to make that clear on the record. I guess I didn't read them out apart, but yes, they did receive the letter and the notification of this respective as well, this project.
Ready? Motion. I'm just gonna have discussion.
Yeah, that's up to Daniel and the board.
Is there any further comments you guys would like to have amongst ourselves on this, or any motions anyone would like to entertain?
I'd like to move that approval of this application, because if they're living out there and they're also digging both the basement for both structures, we know that they're going to go ahead and build the house. And I can,
Yeah, go ahead.
and I feel that they're have a legitimate reason to do the shed first, because they want to get their trailer inside in the winter to work on their house. So.
Yeah. And before you execute the motion, I just want to say, as far as the noticing theme that I've talked about, when a resolution kind of gets into place, I just want to be clear on it so we have everything correct and accurate in order. Anytime you kind of got a quirk, You look at substantial compliance, where we've substantially complied, and my concern was just generally on that section number, but pursuant to the section 2.02-1B, 1G, basically talks about if we have notice, address quirks or delivery issues or other human error, shall not invalidate the action. I just want to put that out there on the record and say that that should be part of a resolution when we proceed forward with this. So
Okay, so
if you
that,
just
that would,
include that with that, we can be sure to have that in there. So,
okay, how would we generalize that?
I would say just a motion to approve, based upon, a motion that makes it clear that we can approve this respective variance and to just point out the section in the ordinance about public notice. I think that would cover.
So I would amend the motion
Yeah.
to say that I would approve the motion, approve the variance, and also that it is in regards to section 14, right?
That just approve the motion and include a reference that it's compliant with public noticing.
Okay.
I think that would cover.
I want to approve the application and refer to the, how do I say that? And refer to,
If I may, Pam,
yeah,
would something like you're saying, a motion to approve the requested variance, noting that the proper public notice has been achieved?
I would say substantial compliance with
Okay.
public notice has been achieved.
Okay, noting that substantial compliance. Substantial compliance with public notice
Yeah.
has been achieved.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, has been achieved. Okay, Pam, do you mind if I paraphrase your motion
ahead
again? And you
and
tell me if you're happy with it?
I will.
Okay, so Pam has made a motion to approve the requested variance, noting that substantial compliance with public notice has been achieved.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have that motion by Pam, has been seconded by Doyle. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you.
Kirby, I'll call you tomorrow. It'll be a few days before we can get the application materials to you, but we'll have to talk building permit.
Yeah, I gotta get going.
Sure.
Are we done?
We have a few more informational
We-
items, but,
Yeah, if you want to move to the next, that'd be great.
okay. So I'm going to move down to the next item, which would be the accessory second dwelling Senate File 592, which is an information item that Mr. Priestley will update us on.
Yeah, our state legislature has been busy this year with a few more zoning things than we've come accustomed to. Senate File 592 was signed into law by Governor Reynolds on May 1st. This amends Iowa code to regulate how counties and cities handle accessory dwellings. I'm just going to summarize some talking points that I've extracted out of the legislation. It has multiple mandatory provisions, and the first provision is counties must allow at least one accessory dwelling on the same lot as a single family residence, subject to specific conditions under the state code. The accessory dwellings, of course, must comply with any state building code requirement. The size restriction is the second and only one second house, one extra house, cannot exceed 1,000 square feet or 50% of the single family residence size, whichever is larger. Counties are barred from imposing certain limitations or requirements on these accessory dwellings that are more restrictive than those for single family residences. Counties cannot enforce stricter standards for I'm just going to call them ADUs, accessory dwelling units, than single-family dwellings regarding building heights, setbacks, lot sizes, building frontages, lot coverages, density, aesthetics, architectural requirements. They are not required to match design, roof pitch, or materials of the primary residences. AUDs cannot be restricted than those from single-family dwellings. Many jurisdictions in the past have regulated based on a conditional use permit, where it went to zoning commission, come to the Board of Adjustment, and it has to be specifically tailored to a relative or worker. Now, that's thrown out the window, and that's not longer a part of the process. The other part is counties must approve ADU permit applications that meet state and local requirements without discretionary review or public hearings using the same timeline. That negates the conditional use permit process. It wants administrative efficiency, streamlined permitting, reduces time, resources, etc. They talk about how this can lower administrative costs. They have provision in there, any county ordinance, motion, resolution, or amendment that conflicts with these regulations is void. However, counties can adopt more permissive rules than those outlined. In other words, it's meant to be more friendly to the additional house. The law defines several terms. They add in there accessory dwelling unit, an additional residential unit on the same lot as the single family residence, either attached or detached. They have dwelling unit. They reference back to a definition in Iowa Code 562A.6, subsection 3. Single family dwelling residence has an existing in there. It says with an exception allowing shared utility lines with ADUs with separate metering is feasible. Detached ADUs and accessory, like accessory garage, detached garages. I think the impact on the county, what they're trying to achieve is they want clear definitions to help the county be consistent, help counties be consistent across the state. Again, this is another example of the state trying to have the same or making sure they have the same standard. There's definitely questions about this as a whole. I delivered this briefing to the zoning commission last Wednesday as well. I know that when we start to let the dust settle and start thinking about some of the things you have to think about when you put a house on a property, it's going to involve some strategic thinking. And I think staff owes it to the county when we get an application for this to point out, even though it doesn't say this, we need to tell the property owners that you might want to strategically locate this on your lot if you want to put it on your lot, because think about the real estate market and the type of buyer. Are there going to be buyers out there that might be deterred because they love this house, but that house happens to have a second house on the lot? The first question is, how do we sell that house and not sell the other house? That's a classic question we'll get from a realtor. And the realtor, oftentimes we have to educate on the subdivision process or the land splitting process. So when I go back to saying strategically, landowners are going to want to know that, let's say you have a 5, 6, 7, 8 acre lot, and you decide I'm going to put the second dwelling on, why don't I think about an imaginary lot that might exist out there and locate it there strategically so that later on, if we get the idea to split it, that we're going to have enough room on the lot. That's just, proactive thinking. earlier today, I saw Kevin Graham, the Siouxland District Health Director, and brought this up. And there's going to be consequences, of course, wells and septics and easements and maintenance agreements and all sorts of things that are going to have to be ironed out when the dust settles on this. And it makes you kind of wonder sometimes when the state passes these things and they hear back from the county as far as things that are going on. There's definitely scenarios there to be considered. The district health staff is really good at identifying houses, septic systems, types of systems. Ivy over there, the minute she detects a floodplain, they immediately have a different type of system. The systems that can handle the different wetter soil contents, a more of a protected system versus your classic. So they're on the ball over there when it comes to the needs for the houses, the systems, the wells, when it comes to the square footage of the houses and how much it does have to serve. So I'm confident that the county can weather the new regulations, but I do think that it takes us, when we have our conversations with each landowner that has that, to say, hey, be mindful of where you put that on your property, because it's an individual choice about how you affect your property value, your sales value, ultimately in the long run. So there is a lot of personal responsibility to this. I think this reemerges property owner rights as far as the subdivision procedures. I know you guys don't get and gals don't get the minor subdivisions coming to the Board of Adjustment. They go from the Zoning Commission to the Board of Supervisors directly. But developers and proprietors, landowners that simply want to split their lots have a right to create HOAs or to create covenances and restrictive covenances that do govern the rights within the 20-year time frame that are on Iowa code covenances, where you can have a set of standards for your own living community and expectations there. So at times you can still assert your landowner rights in the sense to the grassroots through the restrictive covenants type of scenario on the expectations of you as a proprietor of a lot. And the restrictive covenants basically means it has to be more stringent. You have to meet the county's basic requirements, but then you can have your own set of standards. And we've all seen it to the point of regulating the height of a flagpole or the type of siding on a respective community. And so those things can definitely be looked at. But I think that this sort of turns the whole idea upside down of where counties have been in the past. There's a movement going on around the country. I've talked to some other zoning administrators, such as the city. And as far as there's more of a movement now about housing going on, and the grandparent homes or the family homes, those type of things that have, I think, brought this to some of the state legislatures. So that's kind of generally why we're seeing that. But right now, we're going to have to examine as a county, and I've got to talk with Joshua Widman and the county attorney's office further, because it's looking like we're going to have to axe our restrictions inside the ordinance, as far as we'll have to follow state law and state code while that's in that ordinance, but we can't hold them to the fire as far as restricting them to conditional use permits. They have to be able to get a building permit to build that second house that's compliant. So that's a huge change that our legislatures and our governor brought us. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to, best of my ability.
So when you talk about the ability to split those properties, you know, the problem is you end up with a solid stream of driveways.
Yeah.
Along these roads, and they always want to be on blacktops and farm to market roads. So now you got semis going up and down the road, and you're basically running down a city street.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and I think that this is another area, the county engineer is needed more than ever. If somebody were to file that building permit for that second house, and I would always ask Mark in the past. We haven't had a whole lot of overlap yet, other than these most recent items. But Mark, we would get a lot of times the address. You get the address, or you get the building permit. We would ask Mark how we would feel about the driveway being multi-use, being a single use. And we know that from experience being around, that there's a calculation and there's a method to the madness in terms of sight distance and flow and reaction time that goes out on the road. And I know that Mark at times was comfortable about the one property owner using the driveway, but then when that second one came in, it's where the formula hypothetically gets changed and thrown off. So I think that's another thing that maybe that was not front and center with the legislature when this was being passed. I couldn't
Well,
tell you, maybe you
They
have more
thought
of a-
about it for 20 minutes at least.
but we know there's more ramifications to a house. You have to deal with well septic capacity. You have to
Yep.
deal with the driveway and the flow on there. But what they're saying is you have to treat it exactly the same way as a building permit with the house. And my interpretation right away is they still have to meet the minimum dimension of the 23 as the base for that second dwelling. They also would have to meet, if it's a manufactured situation, they would have to meet the HUD standards for having a shared weight load or having the appropriate weight load and meeting that code. And so ultimately, they can have the dwelling without any more question than what initiates the building permit. But I do think you're correct as far as the scrutiny of the driveway. I don't know how far the county engineer would technically have a veto as far as the house, because recorded Iowa code requires that no property be landlocked and always have a form of access to the respective property. So at times we go through this a lot of times with the recorder's office, where they'll stop a split until they figure out that there's a guaranteed level of access to a property. And the code basically says that there has to be a form of access. So if somebody goes out there and records an easement, we can't stop them in terms of recording easement. So technically you can get a level of access, but we don't know generally if the county engineer in a sense has a veto to that second house. And so that's kind of the other ramification that I have to go back and look, but I hope that our legislators engage some of those respective topics. But the way it reads right now, they can get permitted. We just have to look at it on a case by case basis. Wow.
Well, that was a lot on that, Dan. Thanks for bringing us up to date on that. Does any other board members have any comments for Mr. Priestley on that? Okay. Do you mind moving down to the next item on the variance legislation?
Yeah.
Updating us on that quick?
I would like to say ditto to what I said on the variance side. Basically, I will say this. The Iowa House File 652 approved by the governor basically did expand out the variance. The bill adds more sections to the Iowa Code 335-15 and 414.12, granting the boards of adjustment the authority to approve variances from zoning ordinance terms related to area, dimensional, and numerical limitations. So that means that there's much more flexibility now in terms of the setback. In other words, if you think about arguing how the setback hits you in the pocketbook, that's kind of thrown out more, and it's back toward a practical difficulty situation. The ideal is that we look at the scope of the lot. We see that Yeah, they're trying to fit this in and it's potentially a reasonable project. They're doing their due diligence. The neighbors seem to be on board or not against it. And so what they tried to do is push it more into that practical difficulty lane and appeal to the reason of human beings as far as the rigidness of the ordinance versus some level of flexibility. Staunch trained zoning people are not so excited about that because a variance basically means technically we're waiving the ordinance. We're waiving the ordinance here. But there have been some situations where this wasn't defined as well, and you might all recall the court rulings where the courts have made some interpretations after litigation about what constitutes the variance. So in a way, this was kind of an effort to at least get a little bit more statute versus court interpretation around something. So that would be potentially the good part of it. It's much better, and this is my own personal opinion, it's much better when the people make the decision, the voters, the people pressing their legislators, the normal public policy process, your normal circle to decide what a policy is versus the court system. We respect the courts, we respect the judges. They have a duty to clarify when there is no clarity, but to have something come directly from the legislature and the governor is much more suitable that I think folks can generally get behind. The property owners must still prove that practical difficulty as being unique to their property, not self-created. They can't go create their own problem. And the owner must demonstrate that it will not significantly alter the character of the neighborhood. So you can see how this actually does fall into our criteria pretty well. But it just sort of alleviates off of the aspect of the economic based hardship, which was tough to prove with a setback. So again, the things that people like about it, it's increased flexibility in zoning administration. Some folks see this as stricter criteria that's more guided. It has definitely the potential to make our workload a bit more lengthy, as people now know that there's an option. And sort of the whole balancing the whole development versus community standards, being a little bit more open to development in terms of characteristics that might keep people from placing structures. And I think the old saying, you know it when you see it, kind of is the best way to describe a variance, because every single one we've had here, with the exception tonight, are been a bit different in some respects. I feel like this was kind of carbon copy to one we had a couple years ago that is a form of a precedent. I've got mixed feelings about that because there's a sense where if you issue 2 building permits and you get people on a development project and you put a condition on the building permit, maybe you could achieve it potentially that way, but still I think the variance is important because of the fact that it's in a neighborhood and people should definitely be aware of that situation. And the variance does bind people more to a scenario there. So overall, my closing comment would be that I was very surprised by the legislature this session as far as some of these zoning issues as a whole. I'm try not to critique them, but I think when folks from the community get involved with the legislators and they identify potential issues or problems, a lot of times that's how it gets on the radar. I think the variance situation was much more because of the courts interpreting it and people running into dead ends at different times, which is reasonable. I think the dwelling one and the previous item that we mentioned, just to go back just a tad bit, again, was one that did surprise me, but it was likely looking at it from an economic development aspect on reacting to housing needs. So we know that, you know, when things come up through the legislative process, that's definitely the way we're designed. But public policy always has the arrows on it, and I love that as far as we have inputs and outputs. And we owe it to always consistently look at and see how the system is working. And so I hope always with any policy, any and all people are always open, whether it's the county at the local level, whether it's the legislators, that they're always open to revisiting any type of policy when there could be ways to perfect it. So that's all I got.
Hey, thanks a lot for that, Dan. It's a lot to keep track of. So we appreciate your hard work on that and the interpretation you provided for us. I guess with that, I'm going to probably ask you again to continue on with the update on the nuclear energy facility discussion.
Yeah, zoning commission on Wednesday had I would say a very good transitional, I'm going to describe it as a transitional meeting. To describe this, we've been very cognizant on trying to engage the public, make it aware that nuclear is floating out there, enough to be proactive, kind of mimicking what we did with the solar. And we've had some good input. The NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Brian Burgum kind of gave me a response back, which is quite loaded in online literature and commentary as far as what the federal level does as far as the permitting of nuclear. Assistant County Attorney Widman had put out 2 statements. Initially, one, he advised the zoning commission to ensure that if they look at it, that they don't do it by interpretation as electrical energy generation and the chemical storage. He was looking to them to advise them to have more of an enumeration that is defined and included in there. The commission the previous month was still very concerned about the flexibility argument as far as having the tools to be able to interpret these different levels of technology that might fit under the category. So I think they've been a bit more cautious previously as far as being able to have the approach to address the matter as it comes before them. They tend to like and I got to be careful speaking for them, but I will say what I gleaned off the meetings. They like the ability to be able to see the flexibility in the conditional use as far as having a category to be able to evaluate the category, which is a very reasonable argument. The county attorney at hand is looking at it from the defensible standpoint of we all know litigation starts at any level of a process, whether it's the start or the end of a process. And to the point of having an interpretation, you could have somebody say, in 2008, when this ordinance was created, you guys and gals put in there electrical energy generation. As far as I can tell, nuclear existed in 2008. And by the way, they also put wind in the ordinance at that time. And they also had, let's see, electrical. There were a couple examples in there with we did interpret electrical energy generation as being the solar kind of in the past, but they did specifically reference the wind and various concepts there. Private wind turbines was in there. And we know that from the conditional use, and that later on, different subject, way different subject, when the commercial one got put into another ordinance. But the logic behind the county attorney, assistant county attorney, was that if you knew what wind was then, you knew what nuclear was then. And having that stretch, you kind of tend to have a little bit of a weaker argument. He also went in to say that interpretations are okay, but from time to time, and 3.03.3 does interpret or include the concept of we can have interpretations. We can get used to an interpretation of something and do that. kind of like with that Bitcoin kind of scenario where we had that kind of interpretation there. But it may come to a point that if you're interpreting so often that you add it to the ordinance, or it becomes something that is added to the ordinance. I think Joshua looked at that in the reverse and said that there's language right there. It says, yes, you can add things to the ordinance when it becomes necessary. Now, we know nuclear isn't something that you're going to have like 5 of them interpreted off of, and 5 of them are going to be added. So the proactive way in terms of dealing with that is to enumerate in their nuclear energy facilities and likely nuclear storage facilities, have definitions, and have those definitions serve as the basis of facilitating the conditional use program. The zoning commission on the 28th got a second letter from Assistant Attorney Joshua Widman, who heard what they had to say the previous time that they had met, and they tasked me to ask, can we leave the flexibility in there of nuclear, electrical energy generation? Can we leave it in there, but drop a definition in the back of the ordinance? And so I ran that by Joshua as saying, okay, well, we have a definition now in the back of the ordinance. Why can't we just bring that forward and say, okay, we're doing it that way? Then all of a sudden, the catch-22 right in the middle of the ordinance was distance. And if you look under the public noticing regulations, somewhat that we touched on here tonight, there's language in there that says that we permit for conditional uses for 500 feet based upon most every conditional use that we have, except for telecommunication towers, I think airports, and I think landfills. Those go extended out to a mile. And now without that link to the land use summary table, there's no way for me or the Board of Adjustment themselves to interpret electrical energy generation as saying, oh, you need a wider notification zone. So that kind of, we had the aha moment, or the moment where the light bulb kind of came on, I think, at the commission, where we were saying, it's actually kind of a matter of housekeeping to link up the notification distance to the land use summary table to the definition. So now all of a sudden, they've tasked staff to work with county attorney's office on language that puts those terms actually in the table, defines them, and increases that notification distance to the 10 mile, which we've seen 10 mile has been kind of a number that we've seen out there in some of the literature. Now, the other part about this is about 2 weeks ago, President Trump signed 4 executive orders. I don't know if you saw that. The executive orders doesn't change anything quickly, but what it does is it tells the federal bureaucracy that they must create a plan to make the NRC more efficient based upon these different levels of nuclear technology. Now, I watched the signing ceremony, and Secretary Burgum was there and various other people, and I think, be careful how I quote him, but I heard Burgum mention small modular nuclear and the different forms of nuclear that we've heard kind of referenced a bit. And so now what you're seeing is Woodbury County was a little bit ahead of this administration, but nuclear was a part of the Biden administration, but it was more so buried in their energy policy. It wasn't a May of 24 memo that it was part of the energy package, but this Trump administration executive order definitely starts a path on trying to tell the bureaucrats that you got to report back to the White House with a plan that's going to somehow streamline the permitting in a way that's reasonable but yet safe, and keeps the measures together that regulates the form of safety, but it's in a sense trying to find that balance on government efficiency and yet promoting and protecting the public safety. So we're sitting here as a county monitoring that, and this whole process is trying to collect more from the public as much as we can. We did have a couple good comments there the other night. A couple came out near Anthony and asked about it, said, oh, we saw this in the Danbury paper. And then we had another one, actually a land surveyor commented, not so much in favor of it, but it was still nice to get a little bit more input. It's tough to be proactive in public policy. The only time I think we're gonna get the room filled is when we get the first project that's always the balance. Reactive policy is just something about it. When you rubber hits the road and you're really gonna get affected versus, oh, they might do something about that. And that's what we deal with a lot of times with being proactive. And this whole time we've tried to be proactive, and proactive a lot of times means empty seats, unfortunately. But I'm optimistic that the commission is set up on a pretty good course now to have a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors at some reasonable point. I'm hoping when it gets to the Board of Supervisors level that there will be more engagement, but I struggle with that because with the solar, we had the heavy lifting at the commission level where the room was full. And by the time we got through harvest and we got to the spring of the year and we were able to bring it to the Board of Supervisors, I think the public was already convinced with what the commission came up with, and they were light on the Board of Supervisors. Totally opposite of what happened with wind, but we did it differently than we did it with wind, and we're trying to mimic that now with the way the solar was conducted with the nuclear. So we'll find out, but that's the update.
All right. Well, thank you for that update on that then, Dan. And I think your updates are going to continue because you get a drink if you need to, but it looks like we have an update on the zoning commission's recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on a borrow pit for earth and materials in the agriculture estates zoning district. And this looks like a zoning ordinance text amendment.
On a personal note, we've had a lot going on these 2 months. The agenda item on the Board of or zoning commission was a lot. And as far as this borrow pit scenario, there's a landowner out there. I got a call. Somebody said, oh, there's some borrow activity going on out there. And I went out there and looked, and yes, there was. And I followed a truck to a location and started calling some people. And we eventually led to that we have a problem because of various situations where agricultural estates shares most everything that agricultural preservation does, with the exception of housing density and borrow pits. Those are pretty much the 2 key things. Now, you could have a suitable location that has a 40-acre tract that was put into AE for future planning, and it could be perfectly suitable, but it's prohibited to do it on that respective lot. And that is coming in economically, taking the dirt and selling it to another individual for the practicality of getting it off of the land and profiting for your orphan property. And so the other nugget to that is farmers can already do that. So if farmers have X amount of acres that are non-contiguous, and let's say you own 120 in township over here and you have another 400 over here, and your land is just dispersed across the county, and you want to take a hill from one site to another site, you're ag exempt because you're technically with the goal of improving the suitability of your farm, making it more viable. There's a number of reasons that a farmer may need to move some dirt, and I'll have to defer to the farmers. But with that said, farmers could do that all along. But what about the practical, the economic aspect of it on, okay, got this hill down and it's going to be useless to the rest of my farm. I need to sell it or get it off of there. That's when the farmer has to do a conditional use permit and run it through here. Also, if somebody on a small scale wants to take a hill down and sell it and they're on AE, that could technically adversely impact development. We had an individual, another one that was reported to me, shockingly. I had to tell him, you need to stop this. They're taking down side of a hill. And I said, come to the meeting. They did come to the zoning commission meeting and actually said, yeah, this this is kind of problematic here because I can't take my hill down. And I need to haul my dirt off. And the way the words, borrow pit are written, the borrow pit definition is universal to pretty much everything. But at the same time, the reason we've got to have the boards technically involved with a significant amount of dirt coming off is because side dumps affect neighborhoods. Haul routes affect neighborhoods, noise affect everything that we kind of talked about with the college here tonight. Those things apply big time to borrow pits. They temporarily affect something, but the neighbors need to know that stuff that's going on. But if somebody can go get the DNR paperwork, get your MPDES2 permit, get your SWIP plan and everything, it should be real reasonable to show the grading plans and run it through the board and just have a laid out plan. And so by putting the conditional use permit in the AE column, it basically puts the AP and the AE on par. I know Supervisor Nelson did a fine job of explaining to the public when they brought it to the attention that there's some practical needs, snow traps and different reasons where you might come onto private property. It's a different scenario in right of way, but going into private property in an extended fashion triggers that level of the ordinance where the right of way don't. And so there are reasons why it could be suitable to have that as part of the public discussion through the conditional use. So the supervisors directed the commission to conduct the public hearing, to consider it, and they came back 4-0 with the recommendation to the board. And now we're sort of trying to tee up and get the public hearing scenario set up and ready. Tomorrow night, I asked them for an agenda item to get some dates set up to debate that borrow pit scenario to mitigate that. But borrow pits, unfortunately, are both temporary and can be long-term. They come in all different shapes and sizes. And we know that you all have the authority to condition those based on how you see fit as far as the conditions on the ground. Sunset them, end them by a date, operation hours. When we had that gravel area out there by Highway 20 on Buchanan, you might remember somebody said, hey, the church is there. You got to be respectful of the church and everything. And I think that group that was there, they did a reasonable job on fitting in and they got out of there. So
Yep.
That's the story.
All right. Well, thank you again for that, Dan. I think you might get a break now. I guess I'll move down to item 6. Are there any public comments on matters not on the agenda? Okay, and seeing none, I guess I'll move down to 7. Do you have a staff update?
Yeah, be watching the Board of Supervisors. Nuclear coming up eventually. The borrow scenario. We just got a lot of things kind of floating across the board. So just please keep an eye out on things, have questions, give me a call, let's talk. It's been so flowing with information. I feel like I haven't talked to you all as much.
It's been a little while, hasn't it?
We got to talk some more.
All right, if that's all you have for us on that side of things, then Dan, I'll proceed down to item 8. Do we have any board member comments or inquiries? Okay, seeing none. Does anyone have a motion to adjourn? Okay, Tom's made a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Doyle. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you guys for coming to the meeting.